But you said you wouldn't drive the car.
I'm not a licensed driver like you are, and he is. Well, I don't build race cars.
They shut me down. I got several certified lawyer letters, saying, you can't do that. You can't be on YouTube. You can't be on here doing that. I'm like, guys, this legitimizes me as a real business, not just a TV show.
Fast and Loud roared across television screens for 8 seasons, turning Richard Rawlings and his Gas Monkey Garage crew into automotive royalty. Millions tuned in to watch the car flips and the fights. It's been half a decade since the show quietly ended, and while most fans assumed the cast drove off into the sunset, the truth is far grimmer. How did their stories end? And what dark turns happened when the cameras stopped rolling? Join us as we reveal the hard, shocking truth about the Fast and Loud cast members who are dead or in jail in 2026. The Collins tragedy. If there was one person in the Fast and Loud universe who seemed to have it all, it was Dennis Collins. Dennis founded Collins Brothers Jeep in 1984, turning a childhood obsession into a multi-million-dollar restoration business. By the time he appeared on Fast and Loud, he was already wealthy from real estate, gold, and silver investments. Fans knew Dennis as Richard Rawlings' longtime friend, the guy who could walk into a garage, point at a rare car, and buy it on the spot. He built a fortune restoring classic Jeeps, collected some of the rarest vehicles in America, and turned his passion into a business empire. From the outside, his life looked like a dream. But in the summer of 2019, that image shattered. Dennis's son, Derek Collins, had followed a path that felt familiar. Like his father, he loved cars. He eventually joined the family business, helping oversee daily operations and becoming a key part of the company Dennis had spent decades building. Then, without warning, tragedy struck. On July 2, 2019, Derek passed away suddenly in Texas. He was only 29 years old. Dennis rarely speaks about the loss of his son publicly. Maybe because behind the successful businessman with several television appearances, there is still a father who lost his son. Since Derek's passing, Dennis has largely stepped away from the spotlight. He continues to run his business, but the public appearances have become fewer and farther between. For Fast and Loud fans, Dennis will always be remembered as the man who seemed to have won at life. But his story is also a reminder that some losses are bigger than money, fame, or success. And for Dennis Collins, the most important thing he ever built was never a car collection. It was his family. But not every tragedy on that show was about a loss. Sometimes, the person fighting for survival was standing right in the middle of the garage. What happens when the person keeping everything together in the garage suddenly disappears without warning? Christy Brimberry. For years, Christy Brimberry was one of the few people capable of keeping Gas Monkey Garage from descending into complete chaos. While Richard made deals and the mechanics argued over deadlines, Christy handled the paperwork, the payroll, and the endless stream of problems that came with running one of television's most famous garages. Fans even gave her a nickname, the Zookeeper. Then, all of a sudden, she disappeared in 2016. Naturally, fans immediately began asking questions. Had she quit? Or did she fall out with Richard? Turned out the truth was far more serious. Behind the scenes, Christy was fighting for her life. In 2016, doctors diagnosed Christy with thyroid cancer. Worse still, the disease had already spread beyond her thyroid. Almost overnight, television became the last thing on her mind. In a bid to get better, Christy underwent major surgery as doctors worked to remove the cancer before it spread further. Luckily, the operation saved her life, but it came at a tremendous cost. By the time she woke up, she discovered that her voice had been affected. For someone who fans knew as the woman constantly answering phones and managing employees, losing the ability to speak normally was devastating. The surgery was only the beginning, and what followed were months of recovery and uncertainty. She underwent chemotherapy and radiation, enduring the nausea, the hair loss, the exhaustion. Throughout it all, she remained remarkably positive on social media, posting photos of her hospital stays and encouraging her followers to get checked. Throughout the ordeal, Christy refused to disappear completely. Instead of hiding from the public, she used social media to document parts of her journey and encourage others to pay attention to their own health. Her message was simple: if something feels wrong, get it checked. Christy kept moving forward, and then, in December 2017, she finally shared the news everyone had been hoping to hear. She was forward, cancer-free. But Christy never returned to Fast and Loud full-time. After everything she had endured, television no longer mattered the way it once had. Today, she lives a much quieter life focused on family, health, and the things that became most important after her battle with cancer. For fans, Christy will always be remembered as the woman who kept Gas Monkey Garage running. But away from the cameras, she accomplished something far more important. She survived. Surviving cancer is one kind of battle, but surviving your own empire is another. How did the man who built it handle all that? Richard Rawlings. If there is one person who embodies the chaos of Fast and Loud, it's Richard Rawlings. To millions of viewers, Richard was the slick-haired entrepreneur barking orders across Gas Monkey Garage and turning every deal into a spectacle. He looked fearless, untouchable even. But the real story behind Richard is far messier than anything viewers saw on television. Long before Fast and Loud made him famous, Richard was fighting battles that could have ended his story before it ever began. Born in Fort Worth, Texas, in 1969, Richard didn't come from money. His father worked multiple jobs just to afford him a toy motorcycle. Cars became an early obsession, and by the age of 14, he had already purchased his first vehicle. That passion nearly got him killed. As a teenager, Richard was so protective of his prized 1965 Mustang Fastback that he confronted a carjacker attempting to steal it in the middle of the night. The encounter ended with Richard being shot. Most people would have treated that as a wake-up call. But Richard kept pushing forward. After high school, he bounced between careers as a firefighter, paramedic, and police officer. But stability never seemed to satisfy him. Eventually, he made a decision that nearly destroyed everything. Armed with his life savings, Richard moved to Los Angeles, chasing a bigger future. Instead, he burned through every dollar he had. By the time he returned to Texas, his Jeep had been repossessed, his savings were gone, and he was forced to start over from scratch. For many people, that would have been rock bottom. For Richard, it was only the beginning. In the early 2000s, he founded Gas Monkey Garage, and even that struggled badly. Richard has openly admitted that Gas Monkey Garage went bankrupt not once, but twice during its early years. Keeping the doors open often meant taking whatever work was available and grinding through 80-hour weeks with no guarantee of a paycheck. Then came the phone call from the Discovery Channel that changed everything and brought up the launch of Fast and Loud. Almost overnight, the struggling garage became one of the most recognizable automotive brands in America. Tourists flooded the shop, and Richard became a millionaire and one of the most recognizable faces in automotive television. But fame solved some problems and created entirely new ones. The bigger Gas Monkey became, the more scrutiny followed. In 2018, Richard found himself at the center of a major legal battle. when partners involved with Gas Monkey Bar and Grill sued him for approximately $6 million, alleging defamation and breach of contract. Richard fired back with a countersuit alleging copyright infringement. The fight dragged on for 3 years before both sides ultimately settled in August 2021. What should have been a routine business dispute soon evolved into something stranger. Across the internet, rumors began spreading that Richard had been arrested or sent to jail. But those claims were completely false. Court records show no criminal charges or arrest related to the dispute. His personal life hasn't been any smoother. Richard married Suzanne, divorced her, remarried her, and then divorced her again. Their final split reportedly resulted in a settlement that included $300,000 and a Mercedes SL 450. Financially and emotionally, it was another difficult chapter in a life already filled with them. And yet, despite everything, Richard never stopped building. As of 2025, he remains deeply involved in the automotive world. He continues to run Gas Monkey Garage, produces content for his own YouTube channel, and in May 2025, opened Gas Monkey Ice House in the Colony, Texas, a massive car-themed restaurant. He also expanded the brand with a location in Sturgis, South Dakota. But if Richard was the face of the brand, the man turning wrenches was supposed to be his best friend. But what if the most iconic partnership in the entire show was never really a friendship at all? Aaron Kaufman. For more than a decade, Fast and Loud sold viewers a compelling story. Richard Rawlings was the charismatic businessman, Aaron Kaufman was the mechanical genius, and together they were two best friends chasing the same dream. Their chemistry became one of the foundations of the show's success. The problem is that, according to both men, friendship was never quite what viewers believed it to be. In a 2018 interview with D Magazine, Richard revealed something that surprised many longtime fans. "Everybody thought we were these buddies and everything," he explained. "And actually, Aaron was just my employee from the time he was 20 until 2 years ago." For roughly 14 years, the relationship viewers watched on television was primarily a professional one. They worked together, built cars together, and helped turn Gas Monkey Garage into a television phenomenon, but they were never the inseparable friends many fans imagined. That revelation cast an entirely different light on Aaron's eventual departure from the show. Behind the scenes, Aaron and Richard wanted fundamentally different things. Richard was building a business and a television brand, while Aaron was focused on building cars. To Richard, deadlines mattered because the show needed projects that could be completed quickly, filmed efficiently, and packaged into 42-minute episodes. Aaron, on the other hand, wanted ambitious builds that could take months of obsessive work and compete at events like the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb or the Mint 400. As the show grew, those competing priorities created increasing friction. The workload only made matters worse. At one point, Gas Monkey Garage was expected to complete 12 rebuilds within 24 weeks, a pace that reportedly required Aaron to work more than 110 hours per week. That sort of schedule could have a man feeling less human and more machine-like. When Aaron later reflected on that period, he said that although he spent 14 years at Gas Monkey Garage, the final 5 felt like 20. After years of creative frustration, exhausting schedules, and life inside the reality television machine, Aaron had simply reached a point where he wanted control over his own projects and his own future. At first, it seemed like he had found exactly that. After leaving Gas Monkey Garage, Aaron landed his own Discovery series, Shifting Gears with Aaron Kaufman, which premiered in 2018. The show was designed to give him something Fast and Loud never could: the freedom to pursue larger, more ambitious builds on his own terms. But it wasn't so easy. Without the chemistry that had helped make Fast and Loud such a success, many viewers felt the show lacked the same energy and entertainment value. The series centered on building vehicles and then racing them, often with mixed results, and reviews were far less enthusiastic than Discovery had hoped. After only 2 seasons and 11 episodes, shifting gears quietly disappeared. Today, Aaron lives much closer to the life he envisioned while working at Gas Monkey Garage. He continues to run ArcLight Fabrication, the custom shop he founded after leaving the show, specializing in parts and builds for classic Ford F-100 trucks. He also remains active in motorsports, competing in demanding events such as the King of the Hammers and the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb. Creative differences are one thing, but what if one of the most famous firings in the Fast and Loud universe was never actually a firing at all? Tom Smith and Jordan Butler. Few storylines in the Fast and Loud universe generated more drama than the firing of Tom Smith and Jordan Butler. To viewers, it looked like a classic reality television fallout. Tom and Jordan were the loud, prank-loving mechanics who constantly pushed boundaries inside Gas Monkey Garage. After one confrontation too many, they were shown the door by Richard Rawlings. Not long afterward, they launched a rival shop called Fired Up Garage and became the stars of Discovery's spin-off series, Misfit Garage. It was a perfect television story. 2 employees get fired, start over from nothing, and attempt to prove their former boss wrong. The only problem is that the story becomes much harder to believe once fans look closely at what happened next. According to the version of events reported in February 2014, Tom and Jordan were fired after allowing a fan with cystic fibrosis to pose for a photograph beside Richard's Rolls-Royce. Tom later claimed that when a manager confronted them and ordered the fan away from the vehicle, an argument broke out. Richard, who had reportedly grown tired of problems involving the pair, terminated both men shortly afterwards. The story generated exactly the kind of attention reality television thrives on. Fans rallied behind Tom and Jordan, viewing them as good guys who had been punished for doing something kind. Then, less than 8 months after their supposed firing, Tom and Jordan debuted as the stars of their own Discovery Channel series. Premiering on October 13, 2014, the show followed them as they partnered with Thomas Weeks and Scott McMillan to launch a new business called Fired Up Garage. In the real world, people who lose their jobs generally spend months looking for work, rebuilding their finances, and figuring out what comes next. The timing led many fans to wonder whether the firing had been entirely genuine in the first place. And the deeper viewers looked, the more they saw clues, one of which was Richard Rawlings himself. Despite being presented as the villain of the story and the man who supposedly threw Tom and Jordan out of Gas Monkey Garage, Richard was listed as an executive producer on Misfit Garage. Even more surprising, the first episode revealed that Fired Up Garage's landlord was Richard, who had reportedly paid the shop's first 6 months of rent. For many fans, that was the moment the rivalry stopped looking real and started looking like a carefully planned television storyline designed to expand the Fast and Loud brand into a second series. But even though it was all staged, real problems were occurring behind the scenes. Jordan reportedly left Misfit Garage in 2014, the same year the show premiered. According to reports, he was unwilling to relocate to the new shop or continue working under the circumstances being created for the series. While the show continued presenting Fired Up Garage as a united team, one of its original stars had already walked away. Despite the behind-the-scenes complications, Misfit Garage managed to survive for 6 seasons and aired its final episode in August 2018. After that, the cast members largely went their separate ways. Staged or not, At least those two got a spin-off. But there was one cast member who walked away with almost no one noticing, and his reason for leaving was simpler than any of them. K.C. Matu. Among all the people who passed through Gas Monkey Garage, few were more important than K.C. Matu. During the early seasons of Fast and Loud, viewers watched beautifully restored cars roll out of the shop week after week. But many of those eye-catching finishes that helped turn projects into profits came from K.C., the painter responsible for transforming rough, worn-out vehicles into showpieces. But despite how often his work appeared on screen, most viewers never knew K.C. did not arrive at Fast and Loud looking for an opportunity. Before Discovery cameras showed up at Gas Monkey Garage, K.C. and his wife, Casey, had opened K.C.'s paint shop in 2008. By the time Fast and Loud premiered in 2012, he was already running a successful business of his own. So, while K.C. was balancing the demands of a growing television production, he was also trying to maintain the business he had built years earlier. Over time, that balancing act became increasingly difficult. According to K.C., for roughly 2 years, he worked 7 days a week with virtually no time off. The schedule left little room for personal time. What began as an exciting opportunity gradually became something much harder to sustain. By 2015, K.C. had reached a decision. He announced his departure from Fast and Loud and returned his focus to the business he had built long before the cameras arrived. The show moved on, and before long, many viewers barely noticed he was gone. Today, K.C. continues to operate K.C.'s paint shop in Burleson, Texas, where he works alongside his son, Luke. The shop remains highly respected, with customers often waiting months for projects to be completed. In the end, Fast and Loud gave K.C. greater visibility and introduced his work to a larger audience, but it didn't define his success. And when K.C. decided to leave, he wasn't walking away from the career that made him. He was returning to it. Which cast member had the toughest road after the cameras stopped rolling? And if Fast and Loud were revived again with a new cast, would you watch it? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.